This series shines a light on the personal journeys of influential Australian statisticians who shaped our discipline and inspired generations. Today, we're honored to hear from Professor Helen MacGillivray, a statistician important person in statistic education and leadership. And thank you all for being here. This session will be recorded to support the History Standing Committee's documentations of statistic education in Australia. So please pop up questions in the chat so we can go. With that, I'm delighted to hand it over to Professor Denise Truong to conduct the interview, who will be introduce Helen and lead today's conversation. Thanks.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Dan Yang. The interview of today was actually meant to be Isa Bilgen, who's in Turkey staying at her mother's summer residence, and we thought there might be a communication issue, so I was on standby in case there was, and she hasn't been able to hook into the conversation yet. So I'll at least start the interview, but Isa, if she comes on, I'll hand over to her at that stage. So welcome, Helen, and thank you for agreeing to do this. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about your early life, where you were brought up, which schools you went to, and what subjects were your favourites?
Thank you, and thank you very much. It's an honour to be able to talk to you this afternoon. I was born and bred in Brisbane. I've bounced back, left a couple of times and bounced back. So school, I went to a couple of state primary schools, but my years 9 to 12 were at Brisbane Girls Grammar School. So what did I like? In primary school, I spent a lot of time in the library. So reading and singing, sewing and ball games. Very boring, I'm afraid. At high school, my favourite subjects were English and physics. Maths very much was there, but I loved algebra almost as relaxation. I wasn't that keen on geometry.
Right. Okay, and you went to University of Queensland, I think. Did you study mathematics and statistics from the very beginning, or was that something you worked into?
We have to remember that this was 1968, so statistics courses were really only just starting. Yes, University of Queensland, there was an honours stream from first year. So I was in the honours stream for maths and physics, and I had to do the compulsory chemistry. I was planning to do physics. Second year, about a third of the way through, I couldn't take it anymore, didn't know where their assumptions were coming from. So I dropped physics despite physics trying to persuade me to continue. And the only choice was the statistics strand within the honours maths stream. So then I was going to do applied maths. But by the end of third year, I felt completely at home in statistics, all of it. Stochastic processes, even the electromechanical desk calculators and 7-hour practical exams.
Right.
So between third year and honours, I was lucky enough to be the first vacation scholar in statistics at ANU. So I met all the folks down there, including Pat Moran and Ted Hannon. So I loved the way statistics was clear in its assumptions and queried everything, and the way maths served statistics and statistics initiated developments in maths, and how statistics reached out and brought things together in very coherent, cohesive ways. So I didn't know anything about statistics, but by the end of my honours, I was hooked.
Right. Good. Well, it actually sounds a little bit about my daughter. She started off doing physics and then dropped it for statistics because it had less lab time, but then fell in love with the discipline as she got to know more about it. I also remember those 7-hour practical exams.
Yes.
I
And the
assume they don't have
electromechanical
them
calculators.
anymore.
Yes.
Yeah. So did you do part of your PhD study at ANU? I know your PhD is from the University of Queensland, but was some of your studies at ANU?
No, after honours at UQ. Oh, by the way, during the vacation scholarship, Pat said, have a good time and come back. After honours at UQ, I worked as a tutor at ANU, but I returned to UQ in 1973 and started a PhD. I did it part-time after 1973 because I was asked to interrupt my scholarship to teach.
Right.
So it was UQ. And the problems came from industrial crystallisation in chemical engineering, which was ironic because chemical engineering had tried to get me and a couple of other girls into engineering. And then from 1978, I taught engineers. So do you want to know what my PhD was about?
Yes, please.
Okay. So in crystallisation, moment ratios were used as measures of various properties. So my work was on moment inequalities with applications to particle size distributions. I had to use total positivity by Samuel Carlin. So one problem I had to solve was to get rid of the hand waving around skewness and kurtosis and to find precise general conditions for the third central moment to be positive or negative. That was just one of them. The title of the thesis was Moment Inequalities with Applications, Moment Inequalities of the Lyapunov type with applications to particle size distributions. So post-PhD, it led me to a lot of research and PhD supervision on distributional shape, quantiles, distributional families, orderings, fitting them, and inventing new distributions with interpretable shape properties. So some of the papers get cited now in the most amazing variety of applications, as well as in statistics, economics, physics, medicine, political science, psychiatry, environmental. I sometimes read the titles out to my husband, and he thinks it's hilarious that they get quoted in so many different areas. Just one of the reasons why statistics is so important.
You're right there. So that's very different to the area you became famous for, which is statistical education. So how did that interest evolve? Was that soon after you finished your PhD, or did it take a while to develop that
Probably
interest?
from the first time I tutored. But before I say anything about this, my view is that statistics education, teaching and communication are an integral part of all statistics, probably more so than other disciplines, which is one reason why I set up Oscots the way I did. In fact, I've been writing papers recently on the equivalences between working as a professional statistician and teaching statistics and leading in teaching statistics. So from the start of tutoring, I became interested. Of course, I tutored maths too, but that mainly developed into learning support, school curricula and resources for teachers. In statistics, the development was over 40 years into everything. Just gradually built up on content, structure, pedagogy, assessment, active learning, student-driven learning, design of programs and degrees, reviewing other universities, and mentoring students and staff. So a few journey markers might help when I say it was gradual. In 1976, I was back at ANU as counsellor in mathematics. An interesting position. In 1978, I took over the large first-year science class and the large engineering statistics class. And the differences I made were based on my tutoring experience. So I've been tutoring for a number of years then. So later on in the late 80s, I introduced statistical computing for those large classes. And then in the 90s, I introduced authentic student-driven statistical investigations in large classes. There were double degrees, enrichment programs, and then I started receiving grants, both national and university, for the student investigations, for assessment, I was seconded to the Royal Statistical Society for Statistical Education, where I reviewed universities, and also I reviewed about half a dozen or 8 in Australia and New Zealand. And then in 2006 and 2007, I got 500,000 in national grants and national teaching fellowships. So it was quite a journey. Oh, and I've been editor of teaching statistics for the last 11 years.
So, was your academic career mainly involved around teaching, or did you have a time to do a bit of research?
Oh, I was doing research. So I was doing research as doing both of them. I didn't sort of say, okay, now I'm going to focus on that. It's just that, I mean, one of the things was that I could always see better ways of doing things. And when they worked, it just simply led to more developments. But it was really only in the 90s that things started to get rather crowded. So during the 80s, I was involved in a lot of university committees. We're actually getting into the next question with this. So let's get back to the teaching. So basically, what I loved was the problem-solving process aspect of it. It's very like a statistical investigation. I watched and I listened, I analysed, I dug down and brought things together, I researched, I collaborated with other people, and when I constructed and implemented things, I tested them, I interpreted, I learnt, repeat, statistical investigation process. So it just simply built. And because I was successful in the large classes, as well as at the honours level, I was just in demand. So I loved teaching at all levels, working with other disciplines. I love working with them. I'm known for the authentic student investigations and teaching into engineering, but I've also, some of my best work, I think, was in introductory probability, moving into stochastics. Honours level, I taught MBA, I developed statistical thinking symposia for postgraduates and other disciplines. So it was great, but It just kept building and building.
Build it. And you obviously were very busy. Did that give you much time to publish some of these ideas in the scientific literature, or did you mainly rely on other means of promulgating what you'd learned from your experience?
Yes, I didn't start writing about teaching until the 90s. So my papers until the 90s were research papers. I still was supervising research students into the 2000s, so it was a mixture. And in fact, one of the things with teaching the journal Teaching Statistics in the last 11 years is that there needs to be more about writing about teaching and more sharing. There needs to be better focus on that as a scholastic activity, not educational paradigms, but writing about teaching statistics. So it's quite interesting.
You started your statistics career a few years after me, not too many years, but at that stage, I know there weren't too many female statisticians. It's very different now, of course, but did that cause you any issues? Did it make it more difficult for you in some way?
Until I saw this question, I realised I hadn't noticed.
Right, well, that's good.
Because I always saw people as individuals, and individuals have always been important to me, and individuals are made up of lots of different things: capabilities, personality, strengths, weaknesses, etc. So being female is part of me. I can't imagine not doing it, but there's a lot of other parts of me. So the short answer is no. There were other things, I was the first person on either side of my family to go to university, which of course was more common in those days, wasn't it, Dennis? And that was more difficult, that aspect. But I do have some wonderful, amusing and human stories about being female at that time, and often the first to do things, like the first female to teach into the engineering mainstream, things like that.
Yeah, I can remember asking, we had one female on our executive, and how she felt about these things, and she said the only time she felt out of it was at morning tea time, when discussion tended to revolve around football and cricket and blokey type subjects.
But I could join in that because I only had brothers.
Right, okay,
But if you want one amusing story, so in the 80s, I was interviewed by some young female journalism students. And when they found out when I finished school in 67, they said, but how could you choose maths then? The women's movement hadn't started. So
right.
there are a lot of funny stories that way.
Yeah. Well, from what you said, you don't think being a female has hindered your career. You've already mentioned it, and I know a lot about what you've done in the past, but a lot of it's unpaid. It's not part of your job. You've been involved in various roles in the Statistical Society, starting off as being the secretary. You've done a lot of work for the IASC. Not everyone knows that. That's the International Association for Statistical Education. Became its president. You became president of International Statistical Institute. All these things take a lot of time, especially if you want to do them well. What's driven you in that direction to devote so much of your time to these important but voluntary activities?
There's a lot more, of course. There's also organising conferences, editorial work. I was very much involved with school level 2 and outreach. Basically because I was asked to. Actually, if I can just go back a bit, in the 80s, I was on a lot of university committees, exams committee, disciplinary tribunal. And to be honest, I was asked to do that because I was a female in STEM, but they were fantastic learning experiences. I helped to organise the first Australian Stats Conference in Queensland. And then, as you say, I was asked to be Queensland Branch President and then Stats Society Secretary. I said no to being Deputy Dean at 2 universities. I was on the Institutional Grants Committee of the ARC for 3 years. And in the 90s, so working in the early 90s, I was asked to be President of the Stats Society of Australia at the same time as the ARC asked me to continue on the ARC. So I was asked to do a lot of things, and by people I had a lot of respect for, who said I could make a difference. So sometimes I could see the need and knew I could help, but other times it was people who said, look, you can do this and you should do it. So those president roles, of course, do carry some kudos as well as a lot of responsibility. The rewards are interacting with people in a profession that I love. The rewards are making a difference. For example, in the last decade, when I've been retired, I was chair of the United Nations network of global institutions for statistical training and editor of teaching statistics. So I guess the answer is I was asked to. It's rewarding if you can actually make it work, and you interact with wonderful people.
Right. Yeah, well, they're good reasons. If you had your time again, would you have done anything very different, do you think, than what you've done now? If you look back, is there anything you'd say, oh, I wish I'd done that?
That's a difficult question to answer it, because do I answer it from as I am now, or do I go back in time? So now, well, I'd like a couple of extra lifetimes to try other things.
Right.
I had a student who tried to persuade me to go into actuarial work. People tried to persuade me to go into the ABS. Uh, um, I have a daughter who would persuade me to go into industry. But if looking back at the person I was, I didn't have the confidence to do anything else. Nobody believes me, but I was extremely shy. However, realising I'm talking to early career people, what I would have benefited from back then was more professional development opportunities and more networking opportunities. So when you look at advantages and disadvantages, the disadvantages that I didn't have those, and I didn't have a mentor, and I didn't have experienced people who would advise me. The advantages was that I was freer than I think people now are.
Yeah, I think you've made some good point. Just as an aside, the shyness seems to be a characteristic that you've managed to diminish
Oh,
over
yeah.
the years.
Yeah, no one believes me.
But the importance of networks and mentors. So with technology as it now, and with tools like Zoom, it's much easier to create networks and to be able to use that network. So the ECSN group has a monthly webinar
Yeah.
involving all the Australian states plus New Zealand. So that's a wonderful way of networking and learning off other people. And
Yes.
and mentors, I think in our early days, the role and value of mentors wasn't fully recognised. So
Mm.
I think if you don't have a mentor, it's good to actually do a bit of work to try and find one.
And also the professional development opportunities, Dennis, because, for example, statistical computing was only just coming in, and I didn't have the opportunity during my PhD to, really you had to teach yourself. Unless it was demanded of you, you had to teach yourself. So I think the professional development opportunities are much better these days.
Yeah, and also a mentor. Formerly, you really had to be someone from your place of employment, whereas now
Mm.
that's not the case. It's easier to have a mentor who's somewhere else, perhaps even in another country. Um,
Yes.
well, you've had many achievements through your career. Is there any that gives you particular pride?
Well, when people ask me what I'm proud of, my children and grandchildren, I'm proud of. um, I'm pleased that things I did worked. I'm proud of all the students and the young people that I worked with and what they've gone on to. What has pleased me most? Well, Stat Society of Australia, the Federal Constitution, I redid the first accreditation model, combining journals with New Zealand, then more recently Auscots, IASE, International Association for Stats Education, the ongoing model for the International Statistical Project in particular, and increasing visibility in the statistical community, ISI, structuring the committees and the special interest groups, the Kuala Lumpur WSC, which was a bit of a challenge, and that United Nations network, Global Institutions for Statistical Training. Gosh, it's a mouthful. I would have liked to have done more with the ISI. There were some processes and principles that I was trying to set up. But those are the things that I found pleasing. Oh, yes. And the last 11 years of being editor of Teaching Statistics. I
Oh,
really feel I've made a difference in those areas.
that's a long list. There's nothing in particular that stands out.
Oh, gee, I haven't mentioned what stood out in teaching, although I mentioned it before. Um, I mean, certainly, I guess I'm proud of what I did in teaching, which was developed over a long period of time. Uh, I was one of the first people to get senior fellowship, senior national fellowship in teaching and learning. I don't know. I don't usually tend to think of things like that. Those are more things that
Right.
I'm pleased about. I prefer to leave it to other people.
Okay. And finally, before we hand over to the audience, technology's got the capability of changing the way we teach quite a bit with AI and other technologies. Have you got any views on how you see statistics education going over the next, say, 5 to 10 years? Is it going to be a
Mm,
revolution or evolution? Yeah, what do you see as being the main changes?
Well, I'm probably not the person to ask about that, but I will say that there's a lot of good work being done. It's being built on the last 30 years of good work, which was built on further good work before there. A lot of good work done in technology, a lot of good work done by statisticians in data science. The challenges are still there. And what is interesting, think of a mountain. Think of a mountain that is sort of underneath the sea. So the more that is done, the higher the peak, the more tails you get. And so you do have the constant challenges of implementation and penetration. So the higher the peak, the more there is tail, which is also part of the fact that statistics just keeps on becoming more and more important, and therefore statistics education becomes more and more important. But as editor of teaching statistics in the last 11 years, I have been able to see the best and the fact that there's the same kind of problems that are always there with statistics. And some of them are simply the nature of statistics. It's everybody needs it. It's universal. It's fundamental. It's all about statistical thinking, not about rules. It's about balance. And the problem is that human beings do not like uncertainty and variation. And so that is one of the ongoing problems in statistics, that people try to turn statistical thinking into rules, and it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Oh dear, for somebody who said I was probably not the right person to ask, I said rather a lot. Sorry about that.
That's right. Okay. Well, look, thanks, Helen.
Yes,
I think I may have
Dennis,
some other questions, but sorry.
before we go, there is something, because I'm conscious of talking to early career people here, and there's something that I've always been asked right through my career, particularly when helping early career people. And that's the problem of how do you combine the various aspects of an academic career. And that has always been there. And there's also professional, community, and family. So it's balance, but the questions are all about how, and that's where experienced people can help. I would say to avoid submerging and going down rabbit holes. Effective ways are not always the shortest, and I've often seen people make more work for themselves by trying to avoid work. Integrity and responsibility are not burdens, they're empowering. But that challenge of balance is part of the richness of being an academic.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for those wise words. I've just got an email from Isa, and she wasn't able to connect to Zoom, and sends her apologies. Daniel, you want to moderate question time now? I
Yep.
think one or two were appearing in the chat, but also people can put up their hands if they want to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you, Denise, and thank you, Helen. So we got more questions from the audience. So the first question is, how does one look for a mentor today as a student or early career professionals in statistics?
Now, when you say as a student, you might mean PhD student. I would say that it starts before that. One of the things that I haven't mentioned, in fact, that I didn't mention when we asked about what I'm proud about, I'm proud about the system that I set up to help people learn to teach. And that started with working with undergraduates and then moved into postgraduates and beyond. So I would say, I mean, there's nothing to beat actually. Yes, you can have a mentor remotely, but there's nothing to beat working with people, and it doesn't have to be a single person. So I mean, it can be one of the people who teaches you. It can be somebody that you tutor with if you're doing part-time tutoring. It can be any of those types of situations, and it doesn't have to be a single person.
Right, thank you for your answer to that. And we got another question here is, have you find there are any differences in how you teach someone who wants to learn statistics? So for example, a uni student versus someone who considers statistics a more of an afterthought. So for example, potential researcher in other fields that use stats as a tool.
Yes, well, that was something that I was involved with very early in 1978 when I taught the engineering statistics in the large first year science class. Engineers don't want to do statistics. So I turned that round, and if you're going to teach these large classes, if you're going to teach people who don't want to do statistics, then you need to teach it so that it is an enjoyable and rewarding experience for students and staff, which means that you need to do research, you need to work with other disciplines, and I really enjoyed that, but it was challenging. So with the engineering students in particular, people said, how did you do it? And I said, well, I was prepared, completely prepared. I set the parameters that were completely justifiable to the students. I made sure they knew what we were doing, why, how it fitted in, the role of assessment. And then once you have the parameters set, you can relax and work with the students. But they were some of the ones who drove the student investigations where students chose their own issues. Postgraduates, I was asked by the postgraduate people at QUT to do something to help postgraduates, which is why I designed the statistical thinking symposia. And once again, it was actually making sure that the foundations meant something to them and helping them to see what statistical thinking was about. So working with other disciplines is actually, I find that very similar to what professional statisticians write about working professionally. And it also carries on to leadership. There's been a lot written about statistical leadership recently, and the similar kind of models apply in teaching, and there needs to be a little bit more emphasis on that. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's very interesting, from especially from you because you've been in both sides. So thank you for sharing that. Here's another question from Andrew. Thanks for your talk, and they're interested in your mentioned studies of physics, and there have been some classic texts on Bayesian probability written by physicians such as Paula Jeffries in the UK before World War II and Edwin James in the USA after World War II. Could you tell us something about your contact with Bayesian method and how you might have used them in your career?
Contact with which methods? Spatial?
Bayesian.
Bayesian. Oh, right. Okay. Um, an interesting question, because one of the problems, I think, is to think of Bayesian statistics as separate. I do remember that I annoyed some Bayesians once when I said that the word frequentist was a Bayesian invention. I don't like that kind of compartmentalization, but from the point of view of teaching, I do not think that it has been properly grappled with yet as to how and when to introduce Bayesian. And of course, when you talk about Bayesian, we're talking about Bayesian statistical analysis, Bayesian modelling, Bayesian inference. So I don't think that there has been a proper grappling with it, because I always say, if someone says, why don't you introduce it in first year? And I said, sure. How do you expect me to talk about the distributional aspects to other than statistics majors? Oh, yes. So even Bayes' theorem itself, all of those things, unfortunately, not enough attention has been given to how to teach probability so that it connects with data and statistics. So I wish someone would come along and really give that good attention.
Thank you so much. Dennis, you got your hands up.
Thank you. Yeah, I had one additional question. There's for Helen. There's a lot of pressure on academics to publish, particularly in higher ranking journals, but a lot of people pursuing academic career, their real skill and love is in teaching. So have you got any advice for those who may be trying to resist the pressure of doing more and more research work in order to publish in high-ranking journals, when their real value add might be in teaching?
Well, as I said before, I do think teaching is an integral part of all of statistics, and it is about balance. And I think for early career, they need the support of their seniors and their supervisors. And I do think the statistical profession needs to do a little bit more stepping up in this regard. The paper that I've just written recently, that's in the Australian and New Zealand Journal of Statistics, I think it's online. It's in the Festschrift for Alison Harcourt. And so I was asked to write a review paper, and it finished up rather long. But I do actually try to tackle the problem of, from the leadership point of view, of how to get more recognition of scholastic writing in the teaching of statistics. So I don't think it's something that early career people can solve by themselves. As I said, there's balance needed, and to help with the balance, they need the support of their seniors and their supervisors.
Right.
But don't give up. Don't give up.
Thank you so much.
Come to ICOTS, because that's how you'll find there is nothing like collaborating with other people on teaching. It is actually as rewarding as any collaboration on research.
Great. Thank you so much for your answer to that. We've got a question from Ian Gordon. Do you want to ask a question yourself, or you're muted? Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I can if you like. So it's AI, Helen. ChatGPT can essentially now produce a faultless answer to many assignment questions that we might ask as conventionally framed. And I mean much more than just analysis. I mean a description of the problem, sure, the analysis, coding, producing good graphs, writing up a sound interpretation, getting in every sense that we might desire a correct answer, so to speak. So I'm just wondering if you have views on that challenge to statistical education, and who is sort of working on that? What's the forums where this is being sort of thought about in statistics in particular? It's being thought about across the board in education, but I'm interested in statistics in particular.
Yes. First of all, I'm impressed by your confidence in ChatGPT.
Well, I can show you examples.
Oh yes, I know. I agree. But what has been interesting in the last few years as editor of Teaching Statistics is that we've had a couple of different types of papers come in, and I'm pretty sure that this is also true for the Journal of Statistics and Data Science Education, the one that is the American Statistical Association one. So these two journals are the two journals about teaching statistics.
Yeah.
Now, what has come in is that we've had some very good papers in which students have used ChatGPT and then critiqued what they got back. Now, that is fantastic learning from students' point of view. But then we have also had papers in which people teaching have used ChatGPT or got students to use ChatGPT with no critiquing. So that's my first answer, that one of the roles in it, one of the roles for it, is actually to help students with this very important learning aspect, which is critiquing what comes back, which was the same as we've always had with critiquing reports, critiquing things in newspapers. Now, from the point of view of it's often very good, and I hate to say it, but it's not always good. From the point of view that it's very good, I think that so the whole statistical investigation process, the identification of issues and understanding issues, and what data are available and how to use the data and the quality of the data, those things have become more important. So the ChatGPT aspect is, I think, helping with the parts that well, ChatGPT is making those parts not quite so demanding for students, which means that they can focus more on the problems, the issues, the quality of the data, the end point. So am I being optimistic? Well, I'm a born optimist. So does that help to answer the question, Ian?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean,
a little bit.
The sophistication is getting greater and greater. So
yeah, I know.
C5 in particular,
yes,
will produce startlingly good answers to many standard assignment questions.
Yes. In that case, though, you have to move away from standard assignment questions.
Well, that's right, but that would be something of a revolution to ask them in a substantially different way.
Well, we've had revolutions before, Ian.
Yeah.
I mean, I moved with those student-driven investigation processes where they identified their issues.
Yeah,
That was
and we moved away from 7-hour prac exams for that now.
Oh yeah, well that was a long time ago.
No, but you can say that was a revolution in itself, and
yeah, that's right. And the use of computing output. I mean, there've been revolutions the whole way along. Yeah. The important thing is not to be tied to what was done before, but to analyse and think about what the purpose is and how things fit together. So, for example, with those investigation projects in a class of 600, the reaction of colleagues was, "You've got to be joking." But the point was that it wasn't like that at all, because we rearranged the other assessment. We didn't have the old style of assessment. because the projects did an awful lot of it. And the projects weren't under exam conditions, but oh my goodness, they learnt. So it's not saying, oh, we can't do what we did before. It's saying, right, what are we going to do? What's the important stuff? How are we going to work with it? Which takes effort.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen. I heard that also answer one of the questions in the chat where they asked about whether your thoughts on the authentic assessment in the modern era as we grab that with AI assessment has been a swing away from exams as institutional levels, or has the podium swung too far?
I'm not the right person to ask. I mean, in a sense, my conversation with Ian was a partial answer, but don't forget that I'm retired, and in the last decade, I've been president of the ISI, editor of Teaching Statistics, but I haven't been teaching myself in the last decade. I have been writing about leadership. So I do not have the experience myself of the current year, the current time. So from the details of what to do, I really repeat what I said to Ian. So exams actually are always a help if they are structured in a way that fits with the overall assessment package. Everything doesn't have to be exams and everything doesn't have to be projects. It is really critical to think in terms of what is the purpose of what we're doing. And I remember talking to staff when I was on one of my fellowships on assessment and saying, because at that stage it was all about criteria-based assessment. And the staff was saying, I don't know how to do this. I write my criteria. How do I then do the assessment? And I said, well, no, think of it the other way around. If you have a piece of assessment that you think is really good, then identify what is good about it. And you'll probably find that it does fit with some of the criteria that you value. I think it's a to and fro process. What is the current situation? What are we trying to do with the students? What can we use? What's good and what's not? But I think also collaboration with other people is going to be critical in helping through this era.
That's great. Thank you so much, Helen. I think there were a hands up by somebody, or did I get it wrong?
My hand was up, but my question was already.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I guess perhaps it's a follow-up question to the previous one in terms of the mentorship. There's a question asking, are there any potential projects or network opportunities that you would recommend undergrad or postgrad master students who are doing a statistic-related thesis or participating if they wanted to go into industry, not necessarily for postgrad PhD students who are interested in going to academia?
Interesting. I think that they're asking, there should be perhaps more emphasis, excuse me. There should, I'm so startled by the question. I think they're asking, should there be more emphasis in some postgraduate work on preparation for the workplace? And I agree there should be, but I do not think it's exclusive. I think that internships are always available. Excuse me. Internships have always been available, and I think that's important. But I also think that that's a question to ask the statistical profession.
That's great. Thank you so much, Helen. Is there any other outstanding questions you guys might have for Helen? All right.
I can ask a quick one question.
Oh, please go ahead, Darcy.
Hi, Helen. Do you recommend any type of research in teaching statistics that's modern and new, apart from using AI and critical evaluation?
You mean topics of research?
Topics, yes.
Topics of research and statistics education.
Yes.
Well, they abound everywhere. I mean, teaching into other disciplines is still a challenge. Teaching where there are time restrictions, helping postgraduates in other areas. I mean, there are still considerable mistakes made in other disciplines as far as sort of research methods are concerned, and it comes back to foundations. I am sticking to the university level. Of course, there's heaps of work that can be done at the school level. Professional development for teachers at the school level, professional development for staff at the university level. How do people learn to teach? What else? Structures of mainstream, how mainstream fits in with teaching into other disciplines, which of course tends to depend on the university. Balance of the preparation for workplace plus preparation for research. And that's not just in mainstream statistics, because in other disciplines I found that some other disciplines were more open than others. Some of them just wanted to prepare. They were hung up about their first year students needed to see things, how things were done in their discipline, without actually thinking about sort of foundations for the future. If people are looking for possible projects, if you read teaching statistics and you read JSDSE and see what other people are working on, and read the what comes out of ICOTS in particular, then there'll be ideas.
The one challenge I found is that it's hard to collect data and do some type of research in teaching.
Okay, right. Absolutely spot on. Because one of the things I'm going to be saying, I'm on a panel for the satellite in Munster before the WSC. And they've asked me to talk about experiences from 11 years of teaching statistics. And I think one of the problems is that the educational research paradigms are not necessarily appropriate, and particularly when you're talking about research into teaching statistics. In fact, when I look at what reviewers say, I can actually see that you can really tackle research in teaching statistics as if it is a statistical investigation. The issues, what data are available, the quality of the data, exploring of the data, papers that just do educational research without all of these things and give you strings of p-values and multiple testing, they're useless. And the reviewers don't like them. So think in terms of doing a statistical investigation into teaching of statistics.
Thank you.